Part 59. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 583. When Chi Xiaoyuan went out with Xiaobao in his arms, Chi Heiran didn't understand that his face was a bit stinky. It's only natural to hurt his son, why should he hide it? Look, just arrived at the second gate, Chi Xiaoyuan handed Xiaobao to the nurse to hold him, and he didn't want to hug him in front of outsiders no matter what. Chi Heiran despises the elder brother's way of deceiving his ears and stealing his bell. He hugged the little bear and walked in front of him arrogantly. But little bear didn't appreciate it at all, because Xiaobao had solemnly declared that he wanted to go by himself, and little bear was also clamoring to get down and walk by himself. Under Chi Xiaoyuan's contemptuous gaze, Chi Heiran could only put down his fussy son. The little bear shook off his father's hand and ran to his brother's side. The two brothers walked out together holding hands, their two little heads chatting together. The two brothers wore the same suit and walked together like two balls of fire, but it made everyone who saw it very happy. As soon as they entered the hall, everyone's eyes were attracted by the two children. Wu smiled slightly and said, "Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang are here, come to grandma quickly." Xiaobao didn't like Wu Shi very much, but because his mother had warned him before, he took his younger brother to go there together. Little Bear's attention had already been attracted by the things on the long case, and he was unconsciously drawn to Mrs. Wu. "You two are really good boys. Today is a big day for the two of you brothers to catch Joe. After the long case, you should be like brothers and friends, and be humble to each other, you know. Catching Joe is to choose what you like, how can you give in?" Chi Heiran didn't like Wu's hints and beatings, so he turned his head and said to Xiaobao and Xiang, "You can take whatever you like in a while, and you can do anything else. Give in, but you can't give in when you catch the weak." Wu's complexion changed slightly, and she looked up at the auto repairer, only to see Chi Xiaoyuan was talking to Zhongcheng's senior officials. Although he heard it, he didn't turn around to reprimand Chi Heiran, feeling a little cold in his heart. Wu suppressed the anger in her heart, forced a smile, and handed the two children to their nurses, but when she saw Li Jinghua and Mu Yangling who came in with smiles, she still couldn't help stabbing. "This time it's the two children catch the weak together, there are quite a few guests, so we must treat them well," he said, looking at Xiaobao pitifully. It was all delayed by the war, otherwise Xiaobao's JoJo banquet should have been held a year ago. "Yes, I didn't know where you fled to before, so the things I prepared were useless." Li Jinghua's complexion changed. Today is not Xiaoxiang's birthday, his birthday is 5 days later. The reason why he chose to catch the weak today is because he wants to be with Xiaobao. Last year, because they were fleeing from disaster, they were all focused on the war, so when Xiaobao was 1 year old, he simply prepared a few things and asked him to grab a book and finish the job. Chi Xiaoyuan has always felt ashamed of his son, and with Chi Heiran as a father who loves his son, it seems that he is a stepfather. In addition, he is about to ascend the throne, so he must think more. Xiaobao is very smart, at least now it seems that he is much smarter than their brothers when they were young. If there is no major problem, he will be the heir of Daqi in the future. Li Jinghua and him disappeared for more than a year, which was a place where people could easily criticize and criticize. Now Li Jinghua is the only woman in his backyard, and naturally they live in peace, but after the establishment of the harem, such struggles are bound to increase. He wasn't worried about Li Jinghua, but he was worried about Xiaobao. This is his first son, and possibly the only legitimate son, which shows the importance Chi Xiaoyuan attaches to him. In order to consolidate his position, Chi Xiaoyuan decided to hold another JoJo feast for Xiaobao, to show how much he valued him, and to further strengthen his position. But doing it alone is too eye-catching. It just so happened that little Xiang was about to turn 1 year old, so Chi Xiaoyuan discussed with his younger brother to do it together. Chi Heiran saw that the two brothers were in love with each other, and that Xiaobao had indeed been wronged by JoJo before, so he agreed without even thinking about it. The two brothers are now the most powerful people in Daki, and they thought that no one would bring up old things so uninterestedly at the Kachjo banquet, but they didn't expect Wu to be so reckless. Before Qi Ziyuan returned to Beijing, rumors arose in Beijing about how Li Jinghua's sister-in-law left with their child. If they were kidnapped, Li Jinghua would obviously not be able to be a queen anymore, and even Xiaobao would be criticized. As for Mu Yangling's mother and son, with the future queen in front of them, no one paid any attention to them. But if he is sent away by brother Qi Ziyuan, it means that brother Qi Ziyuan has been criticized. He can send away his wife and young son, but he can't send away his father, causing his father to suffer as a hostage, and even his reasons for rebellion will be suspected. He has no ethics, no filial piety and no loyalty. At that time, it was Fan Zijin who stood up and took the initiative to take over the matter, saying that he found that there was something wrong with the imperial guard surrounding the Qi mansion. Because there was a precedent that Emperor Jinjian detained the family members of the generals as hostages, he rescued them and sent them out of the city as soon as he was afraid. And the family members of other generals were also sent away, so it can be seen that the difference is not limited to the Forbidden Army who surrounded the Qi mansion. As soon as these words came out, everyone remembered that there were other officials and family members who disappeared with Li Jinghua and others, but they had many casualties, and only the Qi family could come back alive. A small number of people accepted this statement, but most of them really questioned why Fan Zijin didn't save everyone, but only Li Jinghua's sister-in-law, mother and son? Fan Zijin sneered at this, and said, Fan is not so capable, and the other generals can only rescue a few people. No family can send the whole family out. If Qi Feng is still saved, will the Wu family be able to save it? After saving the Wu family, how could Qi Shaosheng's brother's wife and children's family not be saved? After being implicated in this way, let alone such a large group of people leave the city, they are afraid that they will be discovered before they leave the mansion. But there are still people who hold on to this reasoning, thinking that even if Fan Zijin wants to save, he should save Qi Feng first, the elders first. This is the most basic morality. Annoyed Fan Zijin said indiscriminately, Qi's mansion was separated from the east and the west. Usually the well water does not interfere with the river water. After my aunt passed away, I only knew that there were cousins and uncles. Back then, my cousin is in trouble, my uncle is a high-quality uncle who destroys relatives righteously, but Fan is a villain who only recognizes relatives. Not to mention that Fan has limited ability and can only send out these few people. Even if he is capable, Fan will only consider it next time his parents, wife, and uncle are of high character, so they will definitely not abandon Dezhou. These words successfully blocked the mouths of most people. Yes, Fan Zijin himself and his parents and wives did not leave. He sent Li and others away first, which shows righteousness. As for Qi Feng, everyone knows that the Qi family is at odds with his son, and his parents it is still here, but the two mansions have been separated. Fan Zijin, who is close to Qi Ziyuan, can be forgiven for not caring about Qi Feng. However, there are still some acid scholars who criticize Fan Zijin for being too narrow-minded, disrespecting the elders, etc., and belittle Fan Zijin's character again and again. But Qi Ziyuan and others knew that this was Fan Zijin's way to divert his attention. Said that the person was rescued by Fan Zijin, Qi Ziyuan and others were totally unaware of it, but this matter cannot withstand scrutiny. If we really need to investigate in depth, even if Qi Ziyuan erased a lot of traces later, a person with great ability can still find out this person they had arranged it long ago. Among other things, the house where Mu Yangling and the others lived was prepared a year in advance. He couldn't kill all the nearby villagers, could he? So Qi Ziyuan didn't want people to mention this matter, but Wu Shi just brought it up again at this moment, and also hinted so clearly, for fear that others would not know. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 584. Chi Xiaoyuan was furious in his heart, his face became more and more majestic, and the hall was suddenly silent. Although Chi Xiaoyuan hadn't ascended the throne yet, everyone regarded him as the emperor, and couldn't help feeling anxious. Although Wu's face was still smiling, her palms were sweaty, and she was a little annoyed at her impulsiveness, but this was not the time to show weakness, otherwise with so many people watching, who would take their mother and child seriously in the future? Chi Xiaoyuan sneered in his heart and didn't say a word. He was already the biggest, so why should he try to accommodate others at this time? Li Jinghua had no choice but to stand up and smiled. Of course the things prepared by the wife are good, but the uncle and the fourth uncle have some obsessions in their hearts, thinking that they haven't taken care of the two children very much, so they are bound to need them. You can only buy it yourself, and the ones prepared by your wife will naturally not be used. Li Jinghua rubbed the heads of the two children, and said with a smile, "These two children have a good relationship, and it is their fate that they can catch Zhou together, and there is nothing wrong with them." Everyone looked at Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling. Before Qi Heiran could speak, Mu Yangling directly lowered his head and asked Little Bear, "Would you like to catch Zhou with your brother? If you want, you can hold his hand, if you don't, you can come to mother's side." The little bear, who was holding onto the corner of his mother's clothes, threw off her clothes at once, ran to Xiaobeo's side, held on tightly with his little hands, and stared at his mother fiercely. Mu Yangling shrugged without saying a word, but everyone saw her attitude. Everyone turned their eyes to Qi Heiran, and seeing him looking at Little Bear with a smile on his face, they understood his attitude. All of a sudden, the hall was bustling again. Qi Xiaoyuan beckoned to Shi Jian, and whispered a word to him. As soon as the catch week time came, the two children were carried to the long case. The desk is very long and large, with 2 tables horizontally and 3 tables vertically. It is full of things collected by Qi Xiaoyuan and Qi Heiran. Because it is the two children who catch the weak, some important things are repeated, such as there are 3 books, and 3 wooden swords. Qi Heiran naturally hoped that his son would grab the wooden sword, so that in the future a father and son would be a pair of generals. How nice it sounds, so he looked at him eagerly and motioned him to get the wooden sword. Little Bear didn't understand his father's look, thinking that he wanted something on the desk to play with, so he grabbed a book and stuffed it into Qi Heiran's arms, and everyone died before they could utter the words smart and eager to learn. Qi Heiran put the book back and said, "Son, you have to get what you like, don't give it to daddy." Little Xiong tilted his head, thinking that his father didn't like it, turned around to look at the things on the desk, and picked up a big gold ingot for him. He remembered that his father had this in his purse, although it was much smaller. Qi Heiran held the gold ingot with a black face, and Qi Xiaoyuan burst out laughing. Compared to the little bear who was staring at Qi Heiran wholeheartedly, Xiaobeo's reaction was much more normal. He sat among a pile of things and saw himself and his younger brother. Being surrounded by people, he couldn't help feeling a sense of pride in his heart. His chest was straight, he could understand what his father and fourth uncle said, and he had to choose what he liked. But Xiaobeo looked around and found that there was nothing he particularly liked. The building blocks that his fourth aunt made for him were not on display. He was a little disappointed. Seeing that his younger brother was still stuffing things for his fourth uncle, he stepped forward holding his hand, said, "Not to fourth uncle, but to you." As he said, he took his hand and walked to the middle of the things, picked up a pen and gave it to him. Xiao Xiong took it over and looked at it, and threw it on the ground if he didn't like it. Then there is the relay game. Xiaobeo's original intention is to let Xiao Xiong choose the one he likes first, and then he chooses. Usually, his mother taught him this way. When there are delicious and interesting things, his mother will coax him to give his younger brother a portion first, and then the rest will be his, and this time is no exception. So Little Treasure kept handing things around him that he thought looked fun to Little Bear, but Little Bear just looked at them and touched them, and then threw them down. Even if there were enough things on the desk, they didn't throw them like this. If the two children handed and tossed it unintentionally at the beginning, it was because it felt so fun, and the two children became addicted to playing, and even forgot that they were still being watched. Seeing that there were fewer and fewer things on the desk, even though the adults couldn't intervene to catch Joe, Li Jinghua couldn't help but interrupt the two of them, telling them to quickly choose what they like. Xiaobao looked up at his mother lazily, and continued to pass things to the little bear, still throwing things down with enthusiasm. He disliked Xiaobao's slow handing, and had already reached out to grab the things and threw them down. When Xiaobao grabbed a wooden sword and handed it to Little Bear, he didn't know if he really liked it or if he was tired of playing and throwing it. In short, he didn't throw the thing down again, but stood up holding the wooden sword, while waving and screaming hee hee. This is the longest thing he has kept in his hands. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and kept complimenting, the third young master will definitely be a fierce general in the future. He looks very brave at first glance, and the nice words are sent out as if they don't need money fall. The next thing is to look at Xiaobao, there is really not much left on the desk. Little Treasure barely thought it was fun, handed it to Little Bear and threw it down, so the rest on the desk were things he had played with and seen before. He lazily pulled a book and spread it out on his lap. This choice was as standard as the wooden sword chosen by Xiao Xiang. Everyone thought that the dust had settled and was about to praise, when Shi Jian came in panting with a box in his hands and handed it to Qi Xiaoyuan. Qi Xiaoyuan took the box and opened it, took out Yuxi and put it on the desk. Everyone was shocked, and they all looked at the two children on the desk with flickering eyes, and even Mu Yangling's heart was raised. Because of the weird atmosphere in the hall, the little bear who was dancing the sword also stopped. He turned his head to look at everyone. Seeing that everyone was still staring at him, he happily danced the wooden sword in his hand again, screaming even more excitedly. He didn't notice that there was an extra piece of jade on the desk from the beginning to the end. And in order to attract the attention of his parents, he deliberately jumped in front of them, waving the wooden sword with his little hand, and yelling hum ha ha ha. The corners of their mouths twitched, and they decisively looked away. Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling looked at their son with relief. Little Xiang didn't notice that there were more things on the desk, but Xiao Bao did, because Qi Xiaoyuan put things in front of him on purpose. He looked up at his father, and then went to pull the stone that he had never seen before. Everyone's hearts tightened when he picked up Yuxi. Li Jinghua's hand holding the handkerchief tightened, almost tore the handkerchief, but Xiaobao looked at Yuxi in his arms, and finally turned his head to look at it again. Looking at the things on the desk, I found that although the stone was heavy, it was cool and comfortable to hold. Xiaobao yawned sleepily, pushed away the things around him, and lay down to sleep holding the cool Yuxi. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 585. Qi Xiaoyuan expressed his importance to Xiaobao with his own actions, even if he didn't make Xiaobao the crown prince immediately after ascending the throne. No one can shake his position. The two children chose the one they liked, and the catching week was over. Mu Yangling stepped forward to hug the little bear, and wanted to take back the wooden sword in his hand, but he dodged it. He took the small wooden sword and went to find his father. Put the wooden sword in his hand, wanting him to dance for him. Qi Heiran picked up the child and said in a low voice, "Daddy will teach you in the afternoon." Everyone was a little surprised to see Qi Heiran holding the child in person. The Qi clan's patriarch opened his mouth, but finally said nothing. Wu looked up and said, "Heiran, our ancestors were particular about holding grandchildren and not having children. Ma'am, that is an ancient ritual in sacrificial rituals, we should accept it, but in this family life, it is natural for father and son to be close," Qi Heiran retorted with a straight face. "Besides, Only a father who is kind can be filial to a son, and I am often not at home. I don't care enough about my children, so it's okay to get closer at this time. Wu suddenly dared not speak. Only a father who is kind can be filial to his son, implying that Qi Feng is not kind, so can they be unfilial at this time? There are quite a few people who have the same question as Wu's, but no one raises any objection at this time. It's a joke. This is Qi Ziyuan and Qi Heiren's eldest son's catch-up banquet. Are they impatient? Qi Ziyuan paused slightly, turned around and hugged the drowsy Xiaobao from the nurse's hand. Li Jinghua was startled when he saw that Li Jinghua was coaxing Xiaobao to give her the jade seal in a low voice. Xiaobao opened his sleepy eyes and glanced at his father, then leaned against his chest and continued to sleep, still holding the jade seal tightly in his hand. Qi Ziyuan grabbed Yuxi and said with a smile, "Put it away for father first, and then play with you at night, okay?" Xiaobao said softly, "It's cool." Qi Ziyuan was taken aback for a moment, and immediately understood that the weather was already slightly hot, and the two children had worn a lot today. Xiaobao was greedy for the coolness of the jade seal. He was a little funny, so he took off his hat and said, "In a moment father will take you back to sleep on the mat." Xiaobao was immediately satisfied, and gave up Yuxi to Qi Ziyuan. Qi Ziyuan handed the things to Shi Jian, took the child out and walked around for a while, as if he had seen the ceremony. Little Treasure was already sleeping soundly with his brows furrowed, but Little Bear was still bouncing around with the wooden sword in his arms. Qi Ziyuan couldn't help but said, "This kid is so real, he's so excited even when it's nap time." Looking at Xiaobao in his arms, he couldn't help but look a little thin. Qi Heiren had already wiped Cub's face, hands, and feet with a towel, and directly stripped off his clothes and stuffed them on the bed. Hearing this, he said, "This kid likes to join in the fun, and if he doesn't sleep now, he will definitely fall asleep without eating at night, and then he will fall asleep early in the morning, get up and knock on the door again." Put the little bear next to Xiaobao, only to find that the little bear has long arms and legs. Although he is 1 year younger than Xiaobao, his stature almost catches up with Xiaobao. Qi Heiren frowned slightly, feeling that Xiaobao was too thin. Qi Ziyuan and Qi Heiren are two brothers with great stature and excellent martial arts. They look more like their grandfathers in appearance. The little bear looks like Qi Heiren, and he also has long hands and feet, and grows very fast, but Xiaobao looks like too thin and skinny. They didn't think it was a matter of inheriting genes, because Xiaobao's small face also resembled Qi Ziyuan, so it could only be a matter of Li Jinghua's previous injuries and premature birth. Qi Ziyuan's eyes turned cold when he thought of this, and he slowly turned soft when he watched Xiaobao turn over uncomfortably. At the end of the grasping week, Qi Ziyuan began to think about moving into the palace. After cleaning up during this period, the palace can be regarded as safe. Qi Ziyuan asked Qi Heiren if he wanted to move in, but Qi Heiren shook his head and refused. "Moving in and moving out, why not just live in Qi's mansion? I negotiated with Rong Xian to give you the title of Rong. Let's make the plaque first, and then you can go to Qin Xiang's mansion later. They dug up the Qin Xiang's mansion too much before, and it will take longer to repair it." Qi Heiren frowned and said, "Didn't the eldest brother agree to let Aling go to the border with me? The Rongjun Palace will be left first. We are so poor now, how can we have the money to repair it?" Qi Ziyuan said, "There is still money to repair the house. It will take a lot of money, let's put it aside for now, wait for 2 years when we have recovered, and then slowly repair it, and make it better, so that future generations will not have to worry about it." Seeing what he said, Qi Ziyuan agreed. Only Qi Ziyuan's family moved into the palace. It was naturally very simple, there was everything in the palace, and there were so many people who came to move things, they all moved in just one trip. Li Jinghua gave Mu Yangling a sign and said, "You must come to the palace to see me often." Mu Yangling nodded in response. On the other side, Xiaobao was hugging Xiaoxiang and crying earth-shatteringly, unwilling to separate no matter what. In the end, Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua had no choice but to agree to them, and let Xiaoxiang stay in the palace for a day, or let Xiaobao stay in the palace for a day every 2 days, and then the two children let go of each other and entered the palace together hand in hand. That's right, they entered the palace together. Xiaoxiang felt that he wanted to experience life in the palace first, so Xiaoxiang stayed in the palace that night. Qi Heiran was very excited at first, but the son who always disturbed their husband and wife finally left. How could he not be happy? But at night, when Mu Yangling said worriedly for the 5th time, "I don't know if the little bear is crying," Qi Heiran was powerless to persuade him. He directly lifted the quilt and pressed it on her, saying, "Don't think about him anymore, gone." After a while, Qi Heiran was kicked out of bed. Mu Yangling said angrily, "I don't know if my son is doing well in the palace, you still have to think about it, go to bed early, and go to the palace to see your son tomorrow morning." The next day, Qi Heiran rushed into the palace aggressively with a dark face. Before reaching the cunning palace, he heard the brat's arrogant whisper. He turned to the tree blocking him, and saw two brats standing next to each other. A big peony flower is pushing hard into the head. The corners of Qi Heiran's mouth twitched. He stepped forward and pulled the flowers in the hands of the two of them. "You don't even have hair, where can you put them?" He handed the flowers to the nurse beside him, and said, "This is something for girls to play with. You are men, what does the hairpin look like? There is no need to spoil such a beautiful peony." There was a coquettish laugh next to Pucci. Qi Heiran followed the sound, and the maid who was watched immediately blushed and lowered her head, and said in a low voice, "Fourth young master, this is not a peony, but a peony." The voice was delicate and crisp, so pleasant to hear, Qi Heiran couldn't help but look at her a few more times. Kuyu's complexion changed slightly. He took 2 steps forward to block Qi Heiran's sight, and asked with a smile, "Why did fourth master come in alone? Where is fourth grandma?" Mu Yangling was in the carriage, and because he wanted to get angry with her, he came first on the horse. Naturally, Qi Heiran would not tell the truth, so he said, "The fourth grandma is behind." Qi Heiran leaned over and picked up the 2 children, one by one arm, and said, "Have you eaten yet?" "No," Xiaobao hurriedly replied, "I want porridge." Little Bear wrinkled his nose and patted his father's arm, twice, and Xiaobao immediately translated, "My brother wants to eat soup dumplings." Little Bear nodded in satisfaction. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 586. Li Jinghua flipped through the roster in her hand and asked, "Which palace is that maid from this morning?" "It belongs to our cunning palace." Wen Kui lowered his head and said, "Jing Yan entered the palace for 24 years, and he is only 18 this year." "It's a good age." Li Jinghua knocked on the roster, and said with a sarcasm, "It's a pity that I'm too stupid to transfer her away. Don't let her stay here to be an eyesore. Xiaoxiang will often enter the palace, and fourth master will definitely go to the harem. Come on, don't let them touch you again." Wen Kui responded, hesitated for a moment and said, "Grandma, the former court is making a fuss about asking the emperor to draft a girl." Li Jinghua said with a smile, "The emperor will not agree. The fourth master's house has not yet started construction. It can be seen that there is not much money available in the treasury. The fourth master is so frugal. It is even more impossible for the emperor to draft at this time. Not many people. It's not like Li Jinghua doesn't have any feeling in her heart. After all, Qi Ziyuan has deep affection for her, but don't say that she is in this position now. Even if she is just the grandma of the Qi family, it is impossible for her not to take a concubine for Qi Ziyuan, isn't she?" Mu Yangling, "Qi Ziyuan is not Qi Heiran." Li Jinghua has always understood her position. She thought for a while, and said, "No matter how many people will be added to the harem, you have to be strict with the people below. I will never allow anyone in the harem to go out from me. Her people will be loyal to her. If they serve the emperor, will the master be her or him? Wen Kui was stunned by Li Jinghua's gaze, and hurriedly bowed her head in response. Also, you should pay more attention to the fourth master. Don't let Yingying and Yanyan in the palace jump on him. The fourth grandma is not a good-tempered person. Wen Kui nodded approvingly when she thought of Mu Yangling's methods. Li Jinghua sighed slightly. There are quite a few people rushing towards the uncle, but in fact there are more people rushing towards the fourth master, but Aling is not alert until now. That's all. I will remind her later. Although Qi Ziyuan's status is higher than Qi Heiran's, Qi Heiran is more popular because the harem is not easy to mess with, and one who is not good will die. Qi Heiran's backyard is not the same. Mu Yangling's natal family doesn't have much influence, and she was born as a village girl, so not only people from outside took aim at Qi Heiran's backyard, but even in the Qi mansion and the palace, there were also many maids and maids who took aim at Qi Heiran. Of course Mu Yangling was aware of it. To these people, she just let out a ha-ha, and then waited for the early bird, and repeatedly told Qi Heiran at night that if she dared to make a mistake, she would take the child back to Xingzhou mansion, and leave with him. Marry another. One sentence made Qi Heiran furious, and before he could express his anger, Mu Yangling twisted his waist with tears in his eyes and said, "No, why should I go back to Xingzhou mansion in despair? If you can't live with your lower body, you must be eunuch first, and then you will take your son back to Xingzhou mansion." After saying a word, Mu Yangling could already see the scene of Qi Heiran abandoning his wife and son, and marrying a new love in Mu Yangling's mind, and he burst into tears immediately. Qi Heiran was helpless, and his anger was punctured with a bang. He hugged Mu Yangling and said, "I didn't do anything to be sorry for you. Didn't you tell me that I don't know how to take concubines and want to have sex with you? How could it be, abandoning wives and children? It is said that those people have bad intentions. Why are you blaming me? I haven't settled with you yet, you are crying. Who made you men always be promiscuous and flirtatious?" Mu Yangling cried. "There are not many good men in the world." Qi Heiran felt wronged, and vowed again and again that he had done nothing, that he would definitely stay away from women other than Mu Yangling in the future, and would never take a second look at them. Qi Heiran wiped her tears and asked, "Why do you like to cry so much recently?" Mu Yangling shook her head blankly. Qi Heiran sighed, hugged her arm tightly, and said, "Don't worry, I will definitely not abandon you." Because Mu Yangling was crying pitifully, Qi Heiran couldn't and didn't want to get angry with her. All his anger could only be directed at those people who moved his mind, such as those ministers who repeatedly tried to ask him to change his first wife, those who tried to climb up on him. The maid or maid of the bed. Qi Heiran found Wang Ma and Li Chun, and said with a sullen face, "You should pay attention to it, send out all the restless girls in the yard, don't let them disturb fourth grandma's rest." Then he found another opportunity to get angry at those ministers who were always testing him, and then he calmed down a bit. Qi Ziyuan kept watching and didn't stop or help, but when the news began to spread outside that Qi Heiran was afraid of himself, he stretched out his hand to slightly suppress the news. But Qi Heiran's internal fear still spread quietly in the officialdom, and spread to the officials and family members, spreading it privately. Qi Heiran frowned for 2 days when he heard the rumors. He obviously listened to everything at home, and it was obviously Aling who was afraid of him. Why did he become afraid of him? He let Aling. Mu Yangling got better after being sentimental for 2 days. Seeing that Qi Heiran had taken care of everything, she didn't have to wait for the first bird, and began to care about summer harvest and autumn planting. Mu Yangling wanted to import corn from the Northland on a large scale, and after getting Qi Ziyuan's consent, he began to ask people to go back to the Northland to buy seeds. Qi Heiran followed Mu Yangling. Seeing that she really didn't worry and didn't cry, he was immediately angry, and turned to find Dr. Sun to settle the score. Didn't you say that the fourth grandma is depressed and needs to be recuperated for a long time? Dr. Sun nodded, exactly. But now that she's all healed, it's only been 3 days. Is this a long time? Chi Heiran bit hard on a long time. Dr. Sun coughed twice, and said seriously, fourth master, fourth grandma is under a lot of pressure, and coupled with the discomfort caused by the change of identity, she will inevitably feel anxious and depressed, and the third young master is not in the mansion these days. Logically speaking, even if it is recuperated, it will not be recuperated so quickly. Dr. Sun sighed, the fourth grandma is really not an ordinary person. Chi Heiran became proud again in an instant, and said, of course the fourth grandma is not an ordinary person. Although Dr. Sun said that Mu Yangling had already adjusted himself, Chi Heiran was still worried and asked if he wanted to take some more medicine. Dr. Sun waved his hands hurriedly and said, since the fourth grandma has adjusted herself, she doesn't need to take medicine. It's 3-point poisoning. Besides, the fourth grandma has a heart disease. Pay more attention. I think the fourth grandma has few people who can talk to her since the eldest grandma entered the palace, and the third young master often enters the palace, so it is inevitable that she will be lonely. Chi Heiran was thoughtful, and after dinner at night, he said to Mu Yangling, who was packing up his son's things to bring into the palace tomorrow, don't send the little bear into the palace tomorrow. Why? Mu Yangling turned his head and asked. Chi Heiran said seriously, let him stay at home with you. I will go to the palace tomorrow and tell my sister-in-law to take Xiaobao out for a few days. Will my son agree? These days he and Xiaobao are on the rise. To explore the palace is so big that 2 children can only walk around a few palaces on short legs in a day, let alone a few palaces. There is such a big imperial garden, so the 2 children started to play adventure games, and Xiaoxiang only came back to stay for 1 night, and then clamored to go to the palace to accompany his brother, just wanting to enter the imperial garden to play adventure games. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 587. Of course little Xiang was not happy. He was having fun playing the treasure hunt game in the palace. Even if his father tried to lure him by going to Zhuangzi to play, he couldn't lure him out. This made Chi Heiran's teeth itch with anger, and was about to force him to stay in the mansion when Mu Yangling stopped him. At first, Mu Yangling didn't quite understand why Chi Heiran had to let Xiaoxiang go home. He only knew Chi Heiran's intentions when he heard Li Shun lamenting how kind the fourth master was to the fourth grandma by chance. Chi Heiran had never told her about this, and Mu Yangling was so moved that he personally cooked for him some of his favorite dishes at night. After eating the braised pork with chopsticks, Chi Heiran put down the chopsticks, looked at Mu Yangling while sitting upright, and said worriedly, Aling, what's wrong with you? It is an unprecedented and rare event to actually cook in person. Mu Yangling felt that he didn't care enough about Chi Heiran, and said softly, during this period of time, my heart was blocked, and I felt like a big rock was pressing on my whole body, so my temper became a little bit bigger. Don't be angry with me. I'm fine now. If I don't do well in the future, just tell me, and I'll fix it as soon as possible. Chi Heiran looked at her suspiciously. Aling, aren't you really sick again? Mu Yangling shook his head hurriedly, and assured him, I'm really healed. I'm in a happy mood now. The gray sky has turned into a blue sky with white clouds, which is extremely high. Chi Heiran believed it after confirming it again and again, put away his caution in an instant, and ordered arrogantly, give me a piece of braised pork. Mu Yangling hurriedly picked up a fat and thin piece for him, and waited for his comment. Chi Heiran chewed and felt that the craftsmanship was better than before, but he didn't curl his lips and said, it's worse than mother-in-law's. It's too far away, and I can't eat it. Mu Yangling paused, looked at the dishes on the table, then at Chi Heiran, and endured it. Chi Heiran picked up another piece of chicken, and criticized while eating, it's been boiled for too long, it's burnt, it's not good. This lion's head has too much flour and too little stuffing. Once you eat it, you know it's not authentic. Mu Yangling raised his foot, but finally put it down quietly. Because there was a table blocking it, Chi Heiran didn't see it, so he complained proudly while sweeping all the dishes on the table into his stomach. Then he leaned on the chair like an old man and asked Mu Yangling to rub his stomach. He had no choice but to eat too much without paying attention. Mu Yangling helped him rub his belly 3 times to the left and 3 times to the right, while muttering in a low voice, "Didn't you say it's not delicious? You ate all of it?" "No way, who told you that you cooked those dishes?" Chi Heiran fell asleep after eating, and said drowsily, "No matter how unpalatable the dishes you cook, I have to eat them, otherwise who will eat them?" Mu Yangling's hand paused, and the anger in his heart dissipated. He leaned half on his body and said, "Hao Ran, thank you." Chi Heiran gave an unconscious tilted his head and fell asleep. Mu Yangling got up and looked at him for a while, then gently picked him up and put him on the bed, and took off his clothes. Li Chun, who had run out of hot water and entered the house, was stunned on the spot. What did she see just now? The fourth grandma and the princess hugged the fourth master, the fourth grandma and the princess hugged the fourth master, still gently hugging the fourth master. Even if you know that fourth grandma is strong, you can't act like this. Li Shun put down the basin and decided to go out and wash his eyes. Mu Yangling gave Chi Heiran a quick scrub and went to bed. Chi Heiran on the side fell asleep, but Mu Yangling couldn't fall asleep. With the improvement of Chi Heiran's status, Ying Ying Yan Yan must be indispensable, and Chi Heiran can't help her settle things every time, but even if she kills others, she can't stop the scent of Chi Heiran's identity. If there were no accidents, Chi Heiran might be the only prince besides Chi Ziyuan's sons. Chi Ziyuan's sons haven't been born yet, and the only one is still a candidate for the crown prince, so everyone's eyes are on Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran is strong, but she can't always shrink under his protective layer. Mu Yangling thought, she needs an identity and ability, enough to deter everyone and prevent them from taking Chi Heiran's idea again. Mu Yangling understood that this was a long struggle. The next day, when Chi Heiran woke up, there was still some mist, but Mu Yangling was ready to go out with high spirits. "What are you going to do so early in the morning?" Seeing that she was fully dressed and got up earlier than him, Chi Heiran asked with widened eyes. You must know that even if Mu Yangling is not lazy, it is not considered to be an early riser, and he will not get up until Chi Heiran returns from practicing sword. In fact, Mu Yangling felt that he was already early enough. If he wasn't a senior in high school or in the army, who could get up at 6:30 in the morning? In other words, the ancients were more strange, they had to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and Chi Heiran was one of them. Maybe he was completely relieved last night. Chi Heiran slept soundly, which caused him to wake up late today, but no matter how late, it was only around 6:30 at this time, and it was only light outside. He didn't understand that Aling was going to what? Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I'm going to go to Zhuangzi for a walk today. I'll come back at noon to discuss something with Zijin. In the afternoon, I'll meet with the managers. If you have something to do today, go and do it. Don't worry about me." Mu Yangling made up his mind to make a big deal, and there were only 2 options, 1, military. But Chi Heiran is a military talent himself, and his talent is destined to be extraordinary. In the past few years, he has learned everything he can learn from Mu Yangling, except that his sense of direction and talent in the mountains and forests is not as good as Mu Yangling, can completely defeat Mu Yangling in any aspect. So Mu Yangling didn't plan to get ahead in this regard. Having such an excellent husband is also a headache for her, because her brilliance will be covered up, so Mu Yangling plans to find another way, which is the goal of her life that she has determined from the beginning. Develop agriculture. Food is the most important thing in Fame. Mu Yangling doesn't believe it, when she let every farmer remember her name, Some people dare to say that she is not worthy of Chihayran, and some people dare to jump out and say that she is worthy of Chihayran, not Chihayran. She wants everyone to say that Chihayran is not good enough for her. No, I want to say that the couple is a match made in heaven. Mu Yangling swore with great ambition that everything will start today, and Mu Yangling encouraged himself in his heart. Aling, are you all right? Chihayran asked cautiously, seeing Mu Yangling's changing expression. Perhaps, Aling was not well. Sure enough, he still had to take medicine when he was sick. He was still too naive. Then he blamed himself again. Did he go too far last night, let the sick Aling serve him for dinner, and said so many things to hurt her? Chihayran felt guilty. He felt that he was really sorry for Aling, and Aling was worthy of being a rare and good wife, and he didn't even get angry when he complained so much when he was sick. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 588. Mu Yangling met Zhu Liang with enthusiasm, explained the details of opening the grain shop, and then went back to find Fan Zijian. When Mu Yangling approached Fan Zijian, he first expressed apology. She planned to take over the grain store business and invest with her dowry, so she couldn't cooperate with him. Second, she had the audacity to ask him for someone. Then, someone from Mu Yangling went back to transport the two, but she needed someone to lead the way, so she asked Fan Zijian for someone who knew the way. Fan Zijian saw Mu Yangling's face full of guilt, so he twitched the corners of his mouth, and said indifferently, "You can do the grain store business yourself, and I will prepare it for you, but you plan to open a few in Linen City." Grain store? 1, Mu Yangling said, "It's just started, so it's natural to open one first." Fan Zijian opened his mouth, wanting to ask, "Then why do you think I will compete with you for a grain store business?" It's not that Fan Zijian is boasting. He now has countless businesses, not to mention just a grain shop. Even if the business of grain shops in Linen City is given to him, he will still hesitate to accept it. In the beginning, Mu Yangling proposed to start a grain store business. Fan Zijian didn't object. Most of it was due to the past friendship between the two, otherwise he wouldn't get involved. Grain is a thing with small profits but quick turnover. The unit price does not make much money, and it takes a lot of effort. To run a grain shop business, you must have a backer and make a lot of money, unless you stockpile food in a disaster year. It was very expensive. If it was still in Dazhu, Fan Zijian might have stepped up, but now that it is Daki, if Fan Zijian put a foot in the grain shop, wouldn't it be digging into the wall of his big cousin? Now he has a hand in timber, silk, tea, salt, and even iron. In the past, meat processing has already accounted for a very small part of his business empire. The share in it is not very large, which shows how much he looks down on Mu Yangling's grain store business. Originally, he planned to assign a steward to run the business just because of the friendship between the two of them. Since Mu Yangling wanted to do it alone, he couldn't wish for it. But he asked curiously, if Mu Yangling has any business ideas, he asks someone to tell him that he can do it, and then he will allocate funds and manpower to operate it, and the final profit will be the same as before. Although they have never paid dividends, they have all been contributed to the Daki army. It is too rare for Mu Yangling to eat alone now. Of course, Mu Yangling couldn't talk about his petty thoughts, so he just said, "I think this grain store business will eventually bring fame and fortune, so I plan to monopolize it." Fan Zijian believed that she was a ghost, waved his hand and said, "It's fine if you don't want to say it. If you don't have enough money, come and ask me for it." Fan Zijian paused and asked, "Have you found all the people? Can you go from north to south, for a short time?" "There is no shortage of people. There are retired soldiers in Hayran. Choose from those who will escort the caravan." The shop will be handed over to Wang Quan first, as long as there is someone who leads the way. Wang Quan is Wang Ma's son, and he came down from Jingzhou Mansion with Director Zhu. He had fought in the shop before, so Mu Yangling was very relieved to use it. Big cousin has given me the management of Huangzhuang now. I'll let you keep some of the more expensive rice such as green rice, but the rest will have to be sold to other grain stores as usual. When your grain store bigger, I don't mind changing the contract with you. Mu Yangling was taken aback, and quickly waved his hands. No, no, I don't sell that kind of expensive rice, I only sell some coarse grains. Fan Zijin was displeased. How much can you sell coarse grains for a few cents a caddy? You can't raise the price of grain, can you? Mu Yangling's original intention was not to sell grain, but to sell grain seeds, so that the seeds they cultivated could be planted all over the country. What's more, the common people are still the most, and they can save a penny for a penny. Mu Yangling briefly talked about his ambition to dominate the industry. Fan Zijin didn't listen to it at all. He only heard her say that the main job of the grain store is to promote grain seeds. He waved and said, most people like to save their own seeds. Corn seeds are transported from the north to the south, and you can make a lot of money in the first year, but it will be difficult to make money in the second year. You must know that the wealthy families in the south of the Yangtze River have corn seeds in their hands. When they see you start selling them, they will definitely not if you keep hiding it. If there is a lot of competition, you won't be able to make much money. Mu Yangling said, I don't want to use corn seeds to make money. By then, the seeds will still be worth 12 cents a caddy. Fan Zijin had a headache and said, at this price, you can even pay for the travel expenses. You bothered to open this grain store to do good deeds. Mu Yangling said blankly, no, I still make money, but the people are so poor, if the price is set too high, they won't be able to afford it. Fan Zijin said happily, it's a good thing you want to monopolize this business, otherwise my fame of Fan Zijin I will be ruined. That's all right, you can go back quickly, don't ask me for money, come back when you close the grain shop. This is not doing business, it is simply doing charity. Mu Yangling was indignant, and complained to Chi Heiran when he came home at night, Zijin didn't even listen to me, I've calculated it, and it's not a loss to sell it for 12 cents a caddy. We bought it in Baidi, the corn only costs 8 cents a caddy. Although it takes a lot of travel expenses to transport it here, as long as the scale is not small each time, I can still earn 1.5 pennies per caddy. Chi Heiran nodded again and again, and did some calculations in his mind. 1 caddy was 1.5 pennies, and 1,000 caddies was 1 tael or 5 taels of silver. Chi Heiran looked at his chattering wife, opened his mouth, and really wanted to say, Zijin can earn a tael of tea leaves by changing hands for a tael or 5. No wonder Zijin despises this business. However, Chi Heiran is not obsessed with money on the surface. Although he is very stingy now, he has always been generous with the money he should spend, so he doesn't think there is anything wrong with the grain shop not making money. Up. Seeing that Chi Heiran was listening carefully, Mu Yangling was happy and said proudly, I've already made a plan. When the time comes, if someone can't afford corn grains for 12 cents a caddy, then sign a contract with us. At that time, we will provide the grain seeds for free, and only need to return the grain seeds when harvesting, and then sell the grown corn to us. I even set the price, which is 8 yuan a caddy. Chi Heiran was stunned, and said, so it's not that you earn less, but that you pay back money. Mu Yangling stated, there is no money back, we are taking a long time to catch big fish. Seeing Mu Yangling's ambitious appearance, Chi Heiran couldn't help but nodded, and said helplessly, yes, let's put a long line to catch big fish. Chi Heiran thought, he should go to Zijin to ask for some emergency money, but don't get stuck with all the money at home. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 589. Chi Heiran wanted to borrow some money for emergencies, but in fact Mu Yangling didn't spend much to open this grain store. Because she has her own zhuangzi. In addition to buying a shop, her village can sell all the grain she sells. As for the corn seeds, the cost is not too high. She only needs to give 2,000 taels to the caravan going north. They will continue to transport a large number of corn seeds southward. Uncle Lu Ting also wrote to tell her the good news that their upland rice seeds have finally made progress. This year, the zhuangzi of the Mu family has begun planting in places with little water and drought. It seems that the growth is good so far. He will send some after the seeds are down, let her do experiments and cultivate them in the south. If dry rice number 1 is successful in the Northland, then the grain production in the Northland will increase by at least half in the future. Individually speaking, this growth rate is not large, but when it is generalized to the whole Northland, one can imagine the impact. The northern land is vast and sparsely populated. If the grain output is stable, the grain price will definitely fall, so Mu Yangling plans to transport the grain from the Mu family to the south. The harvest of the dozens of hectares of land they leased is enough for her. The food store was consumed. Not everyone wants Mu Yangling to intervene in the grain store business. Not long after Mu Yangling's caravan set off, everyone knew that Mu Yangling wanted to sell the corn seeds from the north to the south, and those families who monopolized the corn moved one after another. Stand up! Half of the courtiers and Chi Ziyuan filed a complaint, feeling that Mu Yangling was fighting for the interests of the people, lowering his status, and disgraced the royal family. They hoped that Chi Ziyuan could let Chi Heiran restrain her a little bit. In private, someone approached Zhu Liang and the others and expressed their willingness to bring Mu Yangling to make a fortune together, but only hoped that Mu Yangling would not open a grain shop. This move not only annoyed Mu Yangling, but also Chi Ziyuan. He didn't expect that there would be so many objections from courtiers who were officials. They were simply greedy for profit and completely disregarded the interests of the country. The corn seeds in the Northland were promoted by Chi Ziyuan. No one knew more about the yield and the significance of people's livelihood than him. As Emperor Sejong said, if the corn seeds are planted well, they can be used in times of famine without famine. Yes, it was his fault that the corn seeds in the north didn't flow to the south before, but at that time he was General Chi Ziyuan of the western camp, and he had the idea of rebellion. Now he is the emperor of Daki, and Mu Yangling wants to. It was with his consent that the seeds were shipped to the south. They thought he would be as stupid as Emperor Jinjian, allowing the gentry to control the seeds, but instead allowing the people to suffer from disasters and famines. When Chi Ziyuan got angry, he wanted to take the initiative to send the seeds over, but Rongxian hurriedly stopped him and said, "General, this is not an appropriate move. In this way, we will be confronted with those southern gentry who hold the seeds, and it will also cause chaos." Aling's plan. Rongxian said, "Isn't Aling just trying to make the grain shop famous through this matter? The general might as well help her, and temporarily avoid the sharp edge of those gentry." Seeing that Chi Ziyuan's face was still ugly, he knew that he was angry at the selfishness of the officials, so he said in a low voice, "General, follow the example. Most of these officials are left over from the previous dynasty. Emperor Jinjian only thinks about himself, and the officials below will naturally follow suit. After you ascend the throne, the imperial examination will be held, and a group of officials will be reappointed, and they will be replaced slowly. Now that Chi Ziyuan has not ascended the throne, and his position is not very stable, he still has to endure what should be tolerated." Chi Ziyuan put away the anger on his face, and said, "Let the people along the road pay attention to ensure the safety of the ailing caravan." Chi Ziyuan snorted coldly, "I want to see who dares to reach out." Rongxian said with a smile, "Don't worry, General, Heiran has already given orders." Chi Ziyuan nodded in satisfaction. Aling has a stubborn temper and a fiery personality. He has always been soft rather than hard, and he has always been grateful for the suffering of the people. He wants to see what those gentry of the family can impress him. As for the court, Chi Ziyuan wasn't worried at all. He was on Mu Yangling's side, and needless to say, his younger brother was a wife slave. All the soldiers who came out of the north respected Mu Yangling, and those civil servants who wanted to shake Mu Yangling's position were simply overconfident. Chi Ziyuan intends to temporarily leave this matter behind to deal with other matters, but Chi Heiran rushed into the palace angrily. Chi Ziyuan planned to support Mu Yangling secretly and let it go on the surface, but Chi Heiran didn't want his wife to be wronged, so Mu Yangling was attacked and annihilated in the morning, and he ran into the palace in the afternoon. Just as Chi Ziyuan was about to appease him, he heard Chi Heiran's first words, "Brother, don't you want to attack the aristocratic family and take money from them? Leave this matter to me, and the master will take the people there himself." "Nonsense," Chi Ziyuan said with a downcast face, "I have handed over this matter to Zhang Ziyi, so you don't need to take care of it." "Then when will Zhang Ziyi do it?" Chi Ziyuan looked at him suspiciously. "What do you want to do?" "Don't do anything, just plan to bite them, to see if they dare to stare at Aling. Why does Aling just open a grain shop? Their grain shop has monopolized the entire Jiangnan, and the price of grain is like riding a horse going up. Why, don't you want my family, Aling, to feel sorry for the people and lower the price of food?" Chi Ziyuan rubbed his forehead with a headache, and said, "Don't worry, we are still sitting here, no one can bully your wife." Chi Heiran saw that his eldest brother was unwilling to tell him the exact time, so he bit his lip and left like the wind. Rongxian worried, "Haoran won't cause trouble, right?" Chi Ziyuan was very relieved. He has grown up a lot in the past 2 years, and he will be able to do things properly. Chi Heiran, who does things properly, went directly to Zhang Cheng's house and asked him about the Lumi he wanted to save. Chi Heiran said, "Master Zhang, anyway, you have to sell your endless Lumi to the grain store, so it's better to sell it to your wife. If you go to the grain store, we will give you the same price, and in the future, the guys from Lumige's store will come to collect it. How about it?" There were 3 items of salaries given to officials in the Great Zhou dynasty. One was silver, which had a relatively small proportion, one was Lumi, and the other was Lushan. A high-ranking official like Zhang Cheng, minister of the Ministry of Households, received decimals of silver, but there are a lot of Lushan and Lumi, and with the grain in his own village, don't hoard too much grain. Not every official chooses to open a grain store. Most of them sell the excess to the grain store, and among them, Lumi must be sold. Don't ask why. Will they eat the grain issued by the government? All of them were sold as low-grade or medium-grade rice. Generally speaking, this kind of family has a grain shop that they cooperate with regularly, and the Zhang family is no exception, so facing Chi Heiran's request, Zhang Cheng is a little bit crazy. But he was blocked when he came back for lunch, and he had to go to the palace in a while, so he had a lot of things to do. Zhang Cheng knew that many people now objected to Mu Yangling leaking corn seeds to the poor, so Zhang Cheng sneered at the behavior of those people. He is also a member of Monopoly Seeds, but he is not stupid. He also knows that behind Mu Yangling is the future emperor. This is not Emperor Jingyan. You can listen to their fooling around. He would not allow this situation to continue, so he knew that in the future, the situation of corn planting in the south would be the same as that in the north, and the poor people would become the main force. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 590. So when those officials came forward to accuse Mu Yangling of competing for profit with the people, Zhang Cheng didn't say a word. To him, it was just a small benefit. If Chi Ziyuan could reuse it, everything would be worth it. But it is impossible for him to stand on Mu Yangling's side, it would offend many people, so Chi Heiran and Zhang Cheng's reply was to evade. Lumi has already signed a contract with other grain shops, and it cannot be changed. Hearing this, Chi Heiran sneered in his heart. He wanted to please both sides, but it also depended on whether he and his eldest brother were willing, so Chi Heiran simply shut up and just drank his tea with his head down. Jiang Cheng's face gradually became stiff. How could he have forgotten that brother Chi Heiran is notoriously tough-tempered? The scene froze all of a sudden. Fei Bai came in from the outside, saluted and said, "Fourth master, fourth grandma, please go back." Fei Bai raised his eyes to look at Jiang Cheng, and said in a low voice, "Fourth grandma said that you don't need to ask for help. Our family's food, the most important thing in the store is food, and there is no need to fight with others. The status of the Chi family outside is there, and no one will come to smash our Chi family's position." Chi Heiran raised his eyebrows, put down his teacup, got up and said, "Since Mr. Zhang is busy, then Chi will take his leave first." Although Fei Bai's voice was low, Jiang Cheng still heard it. His face froze, and when he saw Chi Heiran was about to walk out, he hurriedly stepped forward to stop him and said, "General Chi, stay. Since the fourth grandma wants to open a grain shop, I will naturally you have to show it, so don't worry. The Lumi of our Zhang family will be handed over to the fourth grandma's grain store in the future. Since that's the case, Mr. Zhang will turn around and ask someone to send Lumi to the shop." Jiang Cheng's face twitched, and after a while, the treatment actually dropped, but he had no choice. The words had already been spoken, and he couldn't change them. Mrs. Zhang came out from behind the screen, and asked puzzledly, "Master, didn't you say you don't get involved? Why did you agree?" Jiang Cheng sighed, "Is there any way? Chi Heiran's attitude is so tough. If I don't make a statement, I will really retire in 2 years." Jiang Cheng has always been a little apprehensive, because he was a member of Prime Minister Qin before, at least on the label, although Prime Minister Qin and the second prince conspired against each other before, and he stayed behind because of his illness, but it does not mean that his previous crimes can be punished. Clean up, now that Da Qi has just been established, he will only be used if he is in urgent need of talents. After 2 years, Da Qi will be on the right track, and it may be time to liquidate them, the veterans of the former court. Otherwise, why would he work so hard for the Qi family? Originally, he wanted to pretend to be a fool and fool this matter away, so that at least both sides would not be offended, but obviously the reckless Chi Heiran is not easy to fool. Chi Heiran, who had just left the house, lowered his face, and Fei Bai followed him back to the Chi mansion tremblingly. He was relieved to see a smile on Chi Heiran's face again. Chi Heiran went to the backyard to meet Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling was taking Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang to dig pits and plant flowers in the yard. This was a hobby that the two children developed from digging treasures. When Chi Heiran came back, he gave the two children to their wet nurse, stepped forward and twisted wiping his face with a handkerchief. He asked, "Why do you want to go to the Zhang family?" "That old man Jiang Cheng is still thinking about stepping on 2 boats." Chi Heiran wiped his hands, touched Mu Yangling's face, and said, "I wanted to help you win over more officials, and let those people be restrained, but since you said no, then forget it." "You don't need to suffer that grievance," Mu Yangling said with a smile. "Anyway, our shop is open, no one dares to come and smash the place, and they can't touch our supply, and the people in the shop are even more loyal. Need to worry too much." This is the benefit of crushing power, and Mu Yangling finally knows why so many people love power. If this is not Da Qi, but Da Zhou, Mu Yangling must face 1,000 difficulties if he dares to do such a thing, but because this is Da Qi, Chi Heiran and even Chi Ziyuan are standing behind her, so even if those people were so angry that they jumped their feet, they still had nothing to do with her. Mu Yangling originally wanted to wait for the corn seeds to arrive before opening, but now it seems that there is no need to wait until then, and Mu Yangling doesn't mind intervening in advance. Therefore, the harvest grain shop opened soon. The grain shop mainly sells coarse grains, and fine millet and flour are also available, but the ratio is much smaller. The main audience of the grain shop is the middle and lower classes. Mu Yangling's grain price is not low, It is 2 or 3 renminbi higher than in the good year, but it is nearly twice cheaper than other grain shops. This price difference makes other grain shops itchy, but she can't help it. It's to non-compliance with industry ethics. The price is so much lower, isn't it going to monopolize their business? Someone waits to cause looting, and then the harvest store closes. But Mu Yangling set a limit from the beginning, only selling 5,000 caddies a day, and one person can only buy 10 caddies a day. She didn't do any special publicity, and the location of the grain store was not obvious. It was just at the corner of an alley. The only thing that attracted people's attention was that it was big enough. A grain store occupied 4 facades, which showed how big it was. As soon as the harvest grain shop opened, there were quite a few people staring at it, but they found that it didn't advertise, and there was no looting as expected, but it was empty. It was the neighbors nearby who first discovered that the food in the grain shop was much cheaper than other grain shops. For 3 days in a row, although Fengshao grain shop had business, it was completely different from what the grain merchants had imagined. They didn't expect that Mu Yangling would not do any publicity. Of course, Mu Yangling won't do publicity. She has a lot of food, but she can't bear to loot it, so she can only do business quietly and wait for the caravan to come back. She doesn't think there's anything wrong with this, at least the business volume is increasing every day, isn't it? Because Fengshao grain shop limited the quantity that each person could buy, the neighbors in the neighborhood thought it was their promotion, and the price would go up after 2 or 3 days, so within a day, the whole family went to Fengshao grain shop for a while. One trip, one person carries back 10 caddies of coarse grain. But on the 4th and 5th days, the Fengshao grain shop was still at the same price, and the neighbors couldn't help asking curiously, only then did they know that this price was their official price, and everyone was excited. Who doesn't have many poor relatives? What's more, they themselves are not very rich, so the news spread to the villages below and some slums in Linan City that day. The next morning, there was a long queue in front of the harvest grain store. Wang Quan asked someone to stand at the door and read the sign placed in front of the door every once in a while, and then said, "My fellow villagers, please forgive me. Although our 4th grandma wants to help everyone, it will take time to allocate food, so it is stipulated the amount that each person can buy per day is also stipulated to only sell 5,000 caddies per day, and once this amount is exceeded, then we will close the stall." Although the people below were sorry, they didn't complain. It was already a great favor for them to sell grain at this price at this time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 591. At the beginning, some people were afraid that the Fengshao grain shop would not last long, so they always came to line up when the city gate opened before dawn, but half a month later, the Fengshao grain shop still had the same time, same price, and same sales volume. The number of people eager to loot has also decreased, so that more people from afar can buy this cheap coarse grain. The business of other grain stores in Linan City plummeted, except for those who were not short of money and did not want to spend time queuing up. They were all willing to wait a day or two to go to the harvest grain store to buy. The news spread quickly, and places 3 or 4 days away from Linan City also dragged their children and daughters to buy food. They were all from village to village, dressed in rags, standing in front of the harvest grain shop and watching eagerly. That long queue. Because there were always people maintaining order in front of the shop, no one dared to jump in the queue, and no one even dared to buy food twice a day, so these people were quickly directed to queue at the back. However, visually, they will not be able to buy food today, but they have brought some thin quilts, and they are already planning to fight a protracted war. Sitting in the carriage, Mu Yangling couldn't help but frown slightly, and said, "The summer harvest is about to begin, why are so many people short of food?" According to the thrifty and hard-working nature of the common people, they would rather stay half-starved and half-satisfied until the grain matures than spend money to buy grain. Ask Wan Quan. He must know. Look at the fourth grandma. He walks around the crowd a few times a day. He is as close as a brother to those people. He can get any news. Mu Yangling pursed his lips and smiled, put down the curtain, and said, "Let's go to the back door." Mu Yangling entered through the back door, and Wan Quan was quickly called in. Hearing this, pity flashed across his face, and he bowed and said, "Fourth grandma didn't know something. There was a war last year, and the order of various places was uncertain at the beginning of this year. With a distance of 4 days, even the farmland outside Linen City has a lot of time to cultivate in the future. The villagers who came today are from the area of Shaoxing Prefecture. Their entire village fled collectively due to the war. It was only because of the edict issued by the imperial court 6 months ago. But when we returned to the village, every family had eaten up all the food, and the remaining things in the house were looted, and the local food price was too expensive, so they came here together when they heard that we had food that was more than twice as cheap. That is to say, even if the summer harvest is harvested, there will still be many people who have not harvested." Mu Yangling frowned. Then what about the next day? Where did they get the money to buy food? Wan Quan lowered his head and said, "I heard that someone is already selling land and children." Mu Yangling was silent for a moment, and said, "If they come back tomorrow morning, just invite them in. If they come from far away, each person can buy an extra 20 caddies of grain, which is not included in the 5,000 caddies limit." Li Shun asked curiously, "Why does it have to be tomorrow morning?" "Fourth grandma is kind," Wan Quan explained while sycophanting. "In this way, they can start their journey after buying food. It's getting late now. If they buy food today, they will definitely have to stay in Linen City for a day. I'm afraid it's not safe for the grain to stay in the city." However, Mu Yangling began to worry about the situation after the summer harvest. He thought that the situation would ease after the summer harvest, but now it seems that if many people do not have a summer harvest, then Qi Ziyuan took the trouble to distribute the Yanjai land to the people and divide the rich and wealthy enclosures. The plan of the forces fell through, and those Yanjai fields would fall into the hands of the wealthy and Fuji gentry once they were divided. Mu Yangling told Qi Heiran about his worries, and Qi Heiran put his hands on his pillow and said, "Brother has been worrying about this too recently, but there is no good way. There is limited food in the national treasury, so Big Brother can't save many people even if he gives it all away. If corruption of ink still occurs, the common people will suffer even more," Mu Yangling said sadly. Qi Heiran smiled and said, "Don't worry, no one dares to be greedy at this time. My brother was furious not long ago because the relief food was replaced, and he chopped off many officials. Now no one dares to touch the sprout. The new country needs thunderous means, and Qi Ziyuan has always acted in a tough manner. Those old and cunning people have long quietly followed Qi Ziyuan's wishes. At least they dare not be so greedy on the surface. Dare to embezzle the Mo country's relief food, just happened to be used by Qi Ziyuan to scare chickens and monkeys. Brother said that as long as the situation is stable until the winter harvest, most of the areas south of the Yangtze River can have 2 seasons a year, and because the north is within the sphere of influence of the elder brother and General Yuan, there has been no real chaos. The people harvest in autumn. It should be good, and high-yield corn is planted, so it will not be a problem this year or next. But if the people sell their land at this time, what will they plant in autumn?" Qi Heiran smiled mysteriously, and said in a low voice, "Are you stupid as a big brother?" He expected it a long time ago. When the edict was issued, it was clearly stated that the divided Yanjiashan could not be traded within 10 years. You only want to look at the Yanjiashan. However, I didn't notice the last sentence. Before the autumn harvest, the imperial court must approve it again, and all the Yanjai fields bought and sold must be returned to the original owners. Mu Yangling's eyes widened. Didn't the person who bought the land suffer a lot? It's not a big loss, Chi Heiran explained. When the time comes, the imperial court will pay for the redemption. This is the first time that Nian will only fine both parties 1/3 of the selling price. At that time, both parties will share it equally. If you owe money on credit until next year's summer or winter harvest, and use grain as collateral, if you commit a second offense, no matter whether it's the buyer or the seller, the Yanjai land bought and sold will be returned to the imperial court, and the imperial court will not redeem the money for the purchase, nor will it return it to the seller. So one has only one chance to make a mistake. This is a private discussion between Zijin and Brother Rong. The elder brother agreed. Just wait for the opportunity to approve the field before autumn plowing. Don't tell outsiders. It means that my own people can remind me a thing or two. Mu Yangling didn't hear it, and nodded again and again. Don't worry, I will definitely not tell others. This method is also quite good. It can curb the trend of land concentration, and there is no need to worry about it for at least 10 years. Brother originally wanted to order that Yanjiashan would never be traded, but thinking that this decree must be opposed by many people, it was temporarily changed to 10 years, and there will definitely be other policies in the future. By the way, where is your caravan going, is it? Brother is now looking at your caravan eagerly. Mu Yangling smiled and said, don't worry, they sent a letter back, and it will arrive in a few days. Everyone was staring at Mu Yangling's caravan, so as soon as her caravan entered the city, everyone saw it. Seeing the 18 carts marching into the city, the faces of those who were watching secretly tightened their faces. If the 18 carts were all filled with corn seeds, it meant that the people in the 3 prefectures near Linan City could plant this stuff. Several grain merchants had to get together to discuss, and the next day, many grain shops began to sell corn seeds at high prices. But few people buy it. Because everyone is staring at the Fengshao grain shop. For more than a month, the Fengshao grain shop has been open every day, and the shop assistants have to say once that this summer, the Fengshao grain shop will sell various seeds such as corn, wheat, and rice, among which corn the seeds are highlighted and only need 12 coins. The price of those grain shops was half a penny a caddy, and the common people only responded with a hee-hee smile. Just kidding, even if the corn yield is high, it is not half a penny a caddy. If there is no harvest grain shop in front, those who have no way, the small and medium-sized landlords in China, may pay that money. Now, even those rich people don't go to those grain shops to buy seeds, but wait for the harvest grain shops to display corn seeds. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 592. Fengshao Grain Shop puts corn seeds at the price of only 12 cents. Those who can afford it will buy it with money, and those who can't afford it will pay on credit first, and sign a contract with Fengshao Grain Shop. But to buy seeds, you must show the land deed and household registration, and buy seeds according to the amount of the land deed, and each household cannot exceed 20 mu at most. Large families are still prevalent in rural areas. Generations of people live together without separation. They can be described as a big family. In order to buy seeds, many families have begun to divide into small families, and buy seeds with household registration and land deeds. After the grain shops in Linan City were well established and the system gradually improved, Mu Yangling asked people to open semicolons in Shaoxing Prefecture, Longxing Mansion, and other places. It was almost a grain shop for each prefecture, and according to the first caravan after arriving, Mu Yangling's caravan returned to the city almost every 3 days, and every time they brought back no less than 15 carts of grain. Even Mu Yangling couldn't help but be speechless. Brother, how many seeds have you hoarded? Chi Heiran said triumphantly, this was prepared last year, and it will be used after we win the Great Zhou dynasty. Originally, we wanted the court to distribute the grain seeds, but there are too many disadvantages, and we are afraid that those officials are colluding with the gentry. deliberately destroying the seeds. Anyway, you have to open a grain shop, which is cheaper for you. Mu Yangling snorted and said, I paid for it. Qi Heiran smashed his mouth and said, I just haven't given it yet. Mu Yangling flew towards him, and Qi Heiran hurriedly jumped to avoid it. Mu Yangling only paid 2/3 of the money for the seeds, and the rest had to be kept for emergency, so he could only pay on credit temporarily. Is the Mu family planning to plant corn everywhere in the south of the Yangtze River? An old gentry said angrily, corn is just a coarse grain from outside. How can it compare to wheat and rice? The general is really confused. The words were high-sounding, but everyone knew that they were so angry because Mu Yangling violated their rights. It is true that corn cannot replace wheat and rice, but in this troubled world, it can temporarily allow the people to tide over the difficulties and survive first. Seeing Mu Yangling's eagerness to spread grain all over the country, other grain merchants had to lower the price of corn seeds. At the same time, everyone understood that Mu Yangling alone could not produce so many seeds. Or because of Qi Ziyuan's backing. In the midst of this excitement, the summer harvest in the south of the Yangtze River ended, and it was time for Qi Ziyuan to officially ascend the throne. On June 18, Qi Ziyuan formally issued an imperial edict. The country name was Daqi, and the year name was Taikang. It can be relocated and resettled, and an edict is issued to exempt tax for 3 years, and the places are staggered. After Qi Ziyuan ascends the throne, the next thing to do is to assign meritorious officials. Qi Heiran was named King of Rongjun, Rong Xian was named Duke of Wei, Fan Zijin was named Duke of An, not to mention other meritorious officials. Even Mu Shi was awarded the title of second-rank general. As for the imperial edict of reward, there are a lot of opinions from civil servants. Qi Heiran and Rong Xian don't need to mention it, but why should Fan Zijin? But the military commander was very satisfied, and had no objection to Fan Zijin's ceiling. Facing the civil servants' questioning, Qi Ziyuan directly clicked on the general to answer. The general looked at them with contempt and said, the Qi family's army's military pay and food are all provided and allocated by An Kuagong, not to mention just the duke, even the county king deserves it. The civil servants were all startled and turned to look at Fan Siwen. Fan Siwen wanted to swallow Coptus chinensis. He really didn't know about this matter. He has always looked down on his son's business, so he never cared about his affairs, and he always went to another hospital to deal with his affairs. Every 2 days if he wasn't at home, how would he know that he was doing such a big thing in private? The general's words inevitably offended the king, but Qi Ziyuan nodded and said, Zijin can indeed go further, it's just that the new dynasty has just established, and there are many opportunities for you to make contributions. In other words, Qi Ziyuan deliberately underestimated Fan Zijin's meritorious service, and was promoted when he made meritorious service in the future. Isn't this the same as Qi Heiran's situation? This means that Fan Zijin will also be a county king for the last time in the future, and Qi Heiran will undoubtedly be a prince. This made the right servant of the official department who had rejected Fan Zijin's marriage before regretted so much that his intestines were green. After distributing the meritorious officials, it was the turn of the relatives of the emperor's family. At this moment, all the officials and their family members watched the emperor closely as if they had been beaten with chicken blood. The Wu family and others are still living in the Qi mansion. The emperor did not reveal what titles he would confer on the Qi Shaosheng brothers before. They all wanted to see the emperor's attitude towards them. The hearts of Wu and the others also raised their hearts. This enfeoffment will affect their future status, so they can't help but pay attention to it. Even Xiao Wu, who has never had much contact with Mu Yangling, often comes to visit her, hoping to get some news through her and Qi Heiran. Mu Yangling was a little annoyed, but he couldn't get angry, so he could only shirk and say he didn't know. But Xiao Wu didn't believe it, who didn't know that Qi Heiran loved Mu's, and the emperor loved Qi Heiran's younger brother the most? It's no wonder she didn't know, so she came to report on time every morning. Today was no exception. Mu Yangling took Xiaoxiang's little hand to the gate of the courtyard, and ran into Xiao Wu head-on. Before she could speak, Mu Yangling said, "Sister-in-law 3, are you coming to play?" "Unfortunately, I'm going to take the little bear out, so I can't entertain you." Xiao Wu didn't feel embarrassed at all, and asked with a smile, "Where are you going?" "I'll go with you, so I can help you with the bear along the way." Mu Yangling refused, "Thank you, sister-in-law 3, but we are going to the palace to see my sister-in-law. If you want to go with me, you have to pass the sign to see her first." Xiao Wu couldn't help but her face froze. Seeing that Mu Yangling was about to leave with the child, she hurriedly stepped forward to hold her hand and said, "Sister-in-law, maybe I haven't seen my sister-in-law for a long time, why don't I go into the palace with you, say hello to sister-in-law? Has the third sister-in-law handed over the sign yet? Why do our sisters-in-law still pay attention to this? Besides, doesn't the sister-in-law give a brand to the younger siblings? Save a lot of effort." Mu Yangling felt impatient, so she stopped and said, "Sister-in-law, that brand can only be used by myself, and I can't bring anyone in. Although we are sisters-in-law, sister-in-law has different identities now, and she will be subject to it soon. I have been named queen, and the royal rules are strict, and this is the most important thing, so brother and sister can't take you in." Xiao Wu's complexion was a little livid. She didn't expect Mu Yangling to speak so bluntly. She really wanted to walk away, but she didn't expect Mu Yangling to say something else. "Sister-in-law, I know you came to me to ask me something, it's just that I really don't know. The fourth master never told me about it, and I don't want to ask him, so if the third sister-in-law wants to know about the entrustment, she doesn't have to come to me anymore. I don't have the news you want here." Xiao Wu looked at her with a sullen face. "Mu, are you not afraid that others will say that you are ungrateful? After all, we are a family, why don't you even want to help with a small matter?"